TV.
Welcome to another episode of Doctor Who, Too Hot for TV. We are the podcast that looks at all things Doctor Who Extended Universe, from MAs and NAs to comic strips, short trips, and from BBV CDs to DWM freebies. We cover it all. Today's guest is Stephen Hatcher. Stephen Hatcher is a 64-year-old retired teacher who has been running the Whovers Doctor Who group in Derby since 2001 and the Whoverville Convention since 2009. He wrote several stories for the Big Finish short trips books and has contributed to any number of fiction and non-fiction books and podcasts on Doctor Who and other TV shows. So, Steve, welcome to the show.
Hello, Dylan. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you too. So, today we're going to talk about two Sixth Doctor stories. But before that, I always ask my guests this question because it helps set the scene of people's fandom and what kind of things they may or may not be into. How did you become a Doctor Who fan?
Well, as you said, I'm 64, so I was born in 1958. So I was 5 when Doctor Who started. So I was aware of Doctor Who from quite a young age. I did things like I owned the Armada book of Doctor Who in an Exciting Adventure with the Daleks. I certainly saw the 2 Cushing movies at the cinema. But I hardly saw the television programme during the 60s, which is bizarre. Because, I mean, even those are the key years. Those are the years leading up to when I was about 11, 12. But Saturday evening, I've told this story on other podcasts before, so apologies to anybody out there who's heard it before. But my family, we always used to go to my gran and granddad's house on a Saturday evening. And my granddad would never ever have the BBC on the television. ITV was turned on at the beginning of television starting and was turned off at the end of the night. The channel button was never used. The explanation for that is bizarre. I mean, he loved his professional wrestling, which he started Saturday evening with.
Yeah.
So that was always the first thing, and then it was some dreadful American film series, To Catch a Thief with Robert Wagner or some rubbish like that. But it wasn't just Saturday, it was all week. It would only ever be ITV. Now, in those days, I think there were ITV households and BBC households. And it more often went the way that people of a sort of a vaguely educated persuasion would say, oh, no, we don't watch that trash on ITV. Because ITV in the 50s, 60s was definitely down market, I think it's fair to say. Although there was some superb stuff on there. But I don't know. I mean, whether it was... I mean, I think he deeply resented having to pay the licence fee. But being a very law-abiding man, he would always pay it.
Of course.
I think it gave him an excuse to moan about it if he never watched BBC. So it's either that or some sort of inverted snobbery. But anyway. So I never got to watch it unless I was ill, and or my brother was ill, and we didn't go up to my gran and granddad's house. So I saw, first ever episode I remember, and I can say absolutely, I definitely saw that episode, was the first episode of The Web Planet. Okay. And I've got pretty clear memories of some scenes from The Massacre, episode 1. Particularly the scenes in the Queen's court, and people trying to persuade her to do in was it the sea wolf, was it? I can't remember.
The sea beggar.
Yeah. The sea beggar, of course. Yes, that was the one. Of course it was. So I've got memories of that, of Queen Catherine de' Medici and so on.
I mean, lucky you.
Well, yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I remember writing a letter to Junior Points of View stressing that they should put on more programmes like Doctor Who, which I wouldn't have seen anyway, and Sherlock Holmes, which would have been the Peter Cushing series, I think. So, I even had the Pressomatic Daleks game with the little thing. So Doctor Who was there in my life, and I remember when the first regeneration happened. I knew that. I knew that had all happened. No, it would have been the Christmas rather of 1972, 72, yes. Because we always used to go to my gran and granddad's for Christmas. They were only the other side of town, but we used to go and stay there for Christmas. And then we would come back on the day after Boxing Day, and there would be nothing to do then because Christmas had gone. We'd just got all these presents in a pile now. We won't play with them because we've played them to death the last few days. And I'd have been 14 then, so these days I'd be a young adult, but in those days I was still a child. Put the television on, and there was the omnibus repeat of the Sea Devils, which I absolutely loved, and thought, right, I'm going to put my foot down and
Nice.
watch this now. And I did from then on. I remember having to write school homework, which was do a review of a TV show that you've seen. And I did the first episode of The Green Death. So from then on, apart from the time when I was a student abroad in 79 and 80, I watched it pretty much all the way through to 89 and the end of things.
So when did you become aware of Doctor Who beyond the TV show? So it wasn't just a TV show, but there were books and there were magazines with comics in, and then obviously later on it grew to audios and all these other things, and then also fandom as a whole.
Well, I had the first two paperbacks back in the 60s. As I said, I had In an Exciting Adventure with the Armada one, and I also had the Dragon paperback of the Crusades. I was a regular reader of TV 21 comic from its first issue, and then Countdown and all that sort of business. I was just slightly too old for the Target books when they came out, because, well, at least I thought I was. I probably wasn't, but I didn't read them. They came out in early-ish 73, didn't they? So yeah. I was coming up 15 then. So I suppose my mind was moving on to other reading materials and things at that point. I was not aware of the existence of Doctor Who magazine until the early 90s, oddly enough. It's bizarre, isn't it? Yeah. And I bought the Red Dwarfs magazine, if you remember that.
I do remember that.
Yeah, and I bought that again from the first issue and absolutely loved that. And then one issue, it said in the front of it, this is the final issue of this. And I thought, oh, blimey, well, now what will I do? And I happened upon a copy of DWM in a branch of W.H. Smith's in Colchester, which I was living in Essex at the time. And it was, I remember it got William Hartnell on the front. And this would have been around about in the lead up to the 30th anniversary in 1993, and I loved the 30th anniversary. I'd started. There was the previous year there'd been the repeat season, hadn't there?
Yes.
Doctor in the Dark, and I loved those, and taped them all off the telly.
Yeah.
And like I say, I was living in Essex, and it turned out, oh joy, that Chelmsford Library had virtually all of the VHSs.
Oh, amazing.
So I thought, right, okay, time to do some catching up here.
Nice.
Of course, illegally copied them. They even provided a nice colour photocopying machine in the library so Brilliant. I could copy the covers. But I must say that having got all the ones from there and watched them and loved them and all the rest of it, I did then actually start buying them and collecting them. So okay. I replaced all those in the end. But
great.
But I wasn't going to wait until they all. And then audios. Well, I got into Star Trek talking books first. There was a whole rash of Star Trek talking books in the 90s. Readings of the books, and then just a very small number of small full cast ones. And I've read a couple of the New Adventures, but not all of them. I got into the BBV audios and very much enjoyed those, but they weren't quite right, but they were near enough.
Yeah.
And then I heard about this Big Finish project that was happening, and with Bernice audios. And I started with the Bernice audios and absolutely loved those. And then one day they said, hey, guess what? We're doing Doctor Who now. So yes, I've got them all the releases, the first 16 releases that came out on cassette. I've got
Oh, you've
those.
got them on cassette?
I've got them on CD and download as well, but
Yeah.
I've got all the cassettes that came out. And then just as the Virgin New Adventures finished, I thought to myself, do you know what? You really need to start reading these and get a collection of these. So I ended up having to pay silly money for some of them because they'd gone out to print by then. But I also started buying the novels and collecting the BBC novels and collecting those as well.
Too hot for TV.
Today, the first adventure we're going to be talking about is the big Finnish story, the Marian Conspiracy.
Marian.
The Marian. I've been saying that wrong for 20 years.
Well, it's after Queen Mary. You can say Marian. You can say Marian or Marian.
There we go. The Marian Conspiracy, which was only the 6th release in the Doctor Who main range. It was written by Jacqueline Rayner, directed by Gary Russell, recorded on the 23rd of October 1999 and released on the 12th of March 2000 on both CD and the aforementioned cassettes.
In the last century.
News at the time, Big Finish had just announced that Bonnie Langford was returning for the Fires of Vulcan with the 7th Doctor. Bonnie had also just launched her own website, which featured an entire page dedicated to Doctor Who. It was much simpler times then, but that was newsworthy stuff apparently. Peter Purvis and the Horns of Nyman star Janet Ellis had helped open the waterlogged Blue Peter 1971 time capsule. The current run of BBC Two Doctor Who repeats was being rejigged after Spearhead from Space did okay, but the Silurians' ratings dipped below 2 millions, so they jumped straight to Genesis of the Daleks rather than running all the way through the colour stories. And then finally, the releases at the time, we had on VHS, we had The Invasion of Time. From BBC Audio, The Paradise of Death was getting a CD release, which seems to happen about once every year, and has done for many years. The Web of Fear soundtrack was released to the long-lost story that was never to be seen again. And music-wise, the BBC Radiophonic Workshop had just released some music from the early years of Doctor Who. In terms of the 8th Doctor adventures, The Fall of Jacqueline, I think is the title, I'm not sure, by Nick Walters was just released. And Short Trips and Sidesteps, the anthology, had just come out. And on VHS, Reverse the Polarity, A Day in the Life of John Pertwee, which was basically an interview with Pertwee from 1992 with a few bits of new footage added in. And the comic strip running was The Glorious Dead. Any of those releases particularly stick out to you as memorable?
Well, I picked up any sort of interview VHSs or anything like that I could get out of. I've got that one, the Reverse the Polarity one. I think so. Anyway, that's the Scottish one, isn't it?
Yes, it was shot in Edinburgh.
We were still a few months away from the first DVD release then, weren't we? Because I think
yes, we
the
were.
5 Doctors was in 2000 and the Robots of Death not long after. Yeah, I remember I bought a DVD player specifically for. I didn't buy it when the 5 Doctors came out. I bought it when Robots came out, so I would have two DVDs I could watch, and I bought them both at the same time as the machine.
I remember sitting down to watch the Robots of Death, and it had the continuity announcements, and one of them was on BBC Two now, a look at the life of single Rory Gallagher, and then on BBC One, Doctor Who. And my dad went, bloody hell, turn over, there's a Rory Gallagher documentary on. I was like, Dad,
fantastic.
You probably saw that about 30 years ago, but it's not on now.
No, I stopped at a W.H. Smith's in Cheadle in Staffordshire on the way home from work. I could divert and go through there on the way home from work. And I bought the machine and the two DVDs with dreadful covers.
I have to say as well, and this is Doctor Who's influence on my life, I guess, I didn't buy a Blu-ray player until they started releasing the Blu-ray box sets a few years ago. And now these shelves behind me are full of various Blu-ray releases of different things.
Too hot for TV.
While chasing a temporal nexus point, the Doctor encounters Evelyn Smythe, who is part of the nexus point. With her family tree disappearing, Evelyn joins the Doctor on a trip back to 1555. There, the Doctor finds favour with Queen Mary, while Evelyn becomes embroiled in a plot against Mary, partly due to her dropping too many hints about Mary's place in history. The Doctor and Evelyn prevent the plot against Mary in order to keep history on the right track and restore Evelyn's timeline. Evelyn then joins the Doctor on his travels.
Too hot for TV.
So you heard this upon its original release?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was. Well, whether I'd taken any subscription by that stage or whether I think what I was doing is I was ringing up Big Finish every month and ordering them over the phone and getting them to send them to me. So, yeah.
So when I asked you to come on this was kind of your first choice. So why did you pick this one?
Well, I mean, looking back to that time, it's a bit difficult to explain to people who've got into Doctor Who since the new series and so on. But I mean, we were talking about the emergence of Doctor Who in the audio medium. For me, Doctor Who didn't come back in 2005 with the first Christopher Eccleston episode, Rose. For me, Doctor Who came back with The Sirens of Time in 1999. Because that was absolutely performed Doctor Who, totally recognisable as being Doctor Who, but with much better effects because they were all in there rather than actually on the screen. So I was listening to them right from the beginning and absolutely bowled over by them right from the beginning. They were being made with love, they were being made with professionalism, they were being made with good writers and actors, and I loved it. So I was always going to buy it anyway. But this particular release is very important because it marks the first time that we had a new companion created specifically for Big Finish, which is Evelyn Smythe. Mm-hmm. The Sixth Doctor had undergone a complete transformation from his TV days. Apparently he had said to them, I'm quite happy to come and work with you. I'm quite happy to do Big Finish plays, but we've got to correct the character of the Doctor. We've got to cut out all the bickering. But this time we'd got the companion that Tom Baker wanted. We'd got the older companion, the almost equal. The companion who appears to be older than the Doctor, but actually we know she's much younger. She's educated and qualified, and she's there because she wants to be there. I mean, there's some lovely quotes. Gary Russell, who created the character of Evelyn Smythe, because tis she we're talking about, Gary Russell sent out a character outline to the writers, which is, think Amelia Rumford meets Angela Lansbury, meets Margaret Rutherford, meets Kamika, meets Maggie Stables, and not as dotty as Amelia Ducat. Yeah. That's it, isn't that? Brilliant idea for character. Again, the Town 6 celebration at the weekend was talking to Gary about just this, and he said that what he did is he followed the pattern that Peter Darvill Evans had set when Bernie Summerfield was created, that he sat down and wrote a character outline and then sent it to the writers who were going to create that character. In Peter's case, that was sent to Paul Cornell, and in Gary's case, that was sent to Jack Rayner here, but also to all the other writers who were going to be writing Evelyn Smythe. And Evelyn Smythe absolutely dominated the Sixth Doctor at Big Finish era in that first decade. More than half of Colin releases are Evelyn releases, and it's an ongoing story.
I think she does a great job in bringing down the sort of bombastic and pompous nature of the Sixth Doctor, and I know that was the purpose of her, and I just think it all of a sudden you have someone that isn't taking the nonsense in the same way, and there is still that bickering, but it's a different sort of bickering. It's a lot more loving and affectionate. And I think she's just a fantastic character, beautifully played by Maggie Staples. And you get this lovely slow introduction, which in some ways is a bit new series in the way that the Doctor goes into her lecture and his machine's bleeping, and then they probably get about 15-20 minutes, which you would never get on television these days, but the audio format allows you to, of just them getting to know each other. He goes to her digs, and they just sort of chat, and kind of she's suspicious of him, he's suspicious of her because she's like this anomaly in time because there's things going wrong with her timeline, and she has these lovely moments. She packs a bag when she knows she's going to go and travel off into time, even packing her cocoa and stuff like that. And you go, oh, companions haven't done this before. I know we get it in the new series, but, Tegan never had time to pack a bag.
It doesn't hurt that the succession of those stories that we've said contain some of the very best stories that there's ever been in Big Finish. I mean, you're talking about things like Rob Shearman's Jubilee,
Yeah.
You're talking about the Spectre of Lanyon Moor, where the Brigadier turns up, and
Yeah.
the Apocalypse element, where they find Romana again. Project Twilight with the Forge and that sort of business. Doctor Who and the Pirates with the singing and brilliant stories. Now, there's a lovely quote from Evelyn. I keep saying Evelyn because my mother is called Evelyn. It's my mother's
Right.
name, Evelyn.
Right. Okay.
But she pronounces it like that. But it's Evelyn, of course it is. We know it's Evelyn. Sorry, mother. Yeah. So in Rob Schumann's Jubilee, Evelyn says to the Doctor, "You're my dearest friend. Still the best thing that's ever happened to me. The places you've taken me, the wonders you've shared. I know that whatever happened to me along the way, even death, it was worth it." And that sums
Amazing.
up that part of the relationship. And the Doctor, if I can do my final quote, in Arrangements for War, which is the one where she meets Rossiter, the man with whom finally she's going to leave the Doctor, although we don't know at this stage she's going to leave the Doctor for Rossiter. The Doctor says to Evelyn again, "It's a challenge in some ways to travel with you, Evelyn. Each of my companions has been special to me. They've all been younger. Perhaps I'm less experienced, less well-rounded. I've travelled with my intellectual equals, with my emotional betters, but no one other than you, Evelyn, has been the whole kit and caboodle."
That's lovely.
Yeah, and that it just sums up why Evelyn Smythe was the perfect companion. And it didn't help that it didn't hurt rather, the actress playing her was an utterly lovely woman as well. I mean, if anyone had the fortune to meet Maggie Staples, you very quickly got an impression of just what a lovely person she was. She was very open to talk to people. She was she was that exactly. She was a very well-rounded person. She'd done all sorts of jobs. She'd been a teacher of modern languages. Good idea, that one. That's what I did for 30 years. So she'd been all sorts of things, and she'd got time to chat to all sorts of people at all sorts of times. And the people who work with her never have anything other than the very best of things to say about her.
They absolutely don't, and her chemistry with Colin Baker is just there from the offset, and that's nothing against any of the other companions he's played against. And again, those relationships get explored more in the Big Finish range, and you start to feel the real warmth between the Sixth Doctor and his companions. But the chemistry between them is far like greater chemistry than you get in anywhere else, I think.
Marian Conspiracy is also the first pure historical that Big Finish had done, and indeed the first pure historical. Well, go on then. Tell me I'm wrong in a minute. But also the first, pure historical that had been in Doctor Who since Black Orchid.
I mean, it is a pure historical in the setting, but it does have a sort of the impetus for the story is based around Evelyn's timeline, perhaps going slightly skew-iff. So while we're going through actual historical events, there is a science fiction undercurrent, I would say.
Yeah, okay, go on, that's fair enough. But you haven't got the meddling monk trying to change history, and you haven't got anything like that going on. You haven't got a giant asteroid heading towards 16th century England or anything.
Well, I think it does. It's very interesting you say that, because it is essentially a historical. Yeah. But I think this does a sort of Doctor Who that I like my historicals sort of 4 episodes and in black and white and studio bound. Like, that's just what I think of historical Doctor Who. And when Doctor Who comes back on television, we get what the celebrity historicals, which essentially this, I guess you could call it that, but as you say, without the big sci-fi element. And those stories, weirdly, have never quite worked for me on television, because I kind of either like my Doctor Who sci-fi or historical, but very rarely. So it's lovely to come back to this, because it's not like the Colin Baker era. It's also not like the 60s era, but it is sort of pitched in that it's 4 parts, and it earns its historical setting, and it earns its runtime. Frequently, I find revisiting certain Big Finish stories that they do have an issue that they don't have enough to cram into those 4 episodes, which, a lot of televised Doctor Who had too. But here you've got 4 episodes and you get to know everybody, and the plot evolves and kind of you get to learn more and more, and you don't quite know where it's going, but you know you're never going to get the meddling monks or the Dalek or something like that. So
and it can absolutely be black and white studio bound if you want to with an audio
yes,
story. It can be whatever you want it to be.
it's true. It's a calmer story than anything the Sixth Doctor's done before.
Yes.
And I think, Colin Baker has a number of stories of this length on television, and they seem to tread water an awful lot. But here, like Jacqueline Rayner delivers a fantastic script. The play is beautiful, well written, eloquent dialogue. So I guess let's talk a little bit about her work. Were you familiar with her before this, and kind of what she does here?
Well, she'd written novels for the Eighth Doctor novels for the BBC, hadn't she?
I don't know whether she'd done those yet.
The order was, yes.
I think what she was mainly known for at this point was adapting the novels, the New Adventures and Bernice books, to audio. And then she got the BBC. I think her first book's about a year after this.
Okay, fair enough. No, I wasn't sure about the timeline there, but you're absolutely right. She adapted some of the Bernice stories, didn't she? In fact, the first one, I think. Oh no, it isn't.
Yes,
if I remember rightly, she adapted that one. She had been a close friend of Paul Cornell, hadn't she?
Yes.
In those days, and got into Big Finish through him. She'd been introduced to them by him, and so on. So and adapted his work for them. Good, solid writer.
Yeah.
Good writer. Well, I say you say solid, and that sounds derogatory, but it wasn't meant as derogatory. She is a good writer. She was a good adapter of stuff, and she proved herself here to be absolutely on top of what she was doing. Very well researched. She knew the history. Absolutely good stuff. A good choice to do this.
And very, very well paced in terms of, as I said before, just like hitting those story beats, pushing the plot on at the right places. I want to jump back a bit. We talked a little bit about Colin earlier. Colin had one other Big Finish story before this, which was the Whispers of Terror.
Whispers of Terror, Perry story.
Yeah. Now, I haven't listened to that in a very long time.
Likewise.
But apparently, Colin's change of direction was requested after that. The Marian Conspiracy is the one that really kind of does the course correction of what Colin wanted to do. So I imagine if you go back to the Whispers of Terror, and I don't know, you would find something more akin to what you got on television in the 80s. But I'll be very interested to go back to that at some point.
Yeah, I'll have a listen to that.
As said, Evelyn reins in his pomposity and brashness and brings out his softer side. And I think it's unfair to say that there wasn't a softer side to his Doctor on television. It was just punctured with larger moments that seemed slightly out of character.
Absolutely.
He gets some lovely stuff in this, and it's not only the course correction for Colin. I think this is the moment where fandom really start to go, oh, Colin Baker's quite good, isn't
he? Yeah.
I remember seeing Gary Russell at a convention talking about that era, about that play, like, say, 6 months after it come out, and he said the response they'd had to everybody suddenly going, oh my God, Colin's great, and then all of a sudden he was topping the polls again in or for the first time in the favourite Doctor thing.
Well, I know Colin's been very hurt over the years by some of the reaction to his Doctor, which has been sometimes very negative and sometimes quite personal, and has been overwhelmingly unfair because he absolutely did what he was asked to do back in the 80s and did it very well. I think there were problems with some of the writing, and there were problems with good writers who were brought in to do Doctor Who, but were not given clear enough direction as to what you should and should not do with Doctor Who. I mean, an absolute spot-on, terrific writer, Philip Martin. And I know Vengeance on Varos has its fans, and it's got some great stuff, not the least of which is Sale and Nabil's performance in that. But I think there's too much in that story that's just not very nice, and that doesn't help. I think Philip Martin was writing gangsters again, which is a different sort of thing. I mean, he's a great writer. He was a great writer, was Philip Martin, and a nice bloke as well. But he was a bit of a grown-up writer, really, to be writing.
Yeah. I feel like Vengeance on Varos, and I do enjoy it, but I could see it sitting a lot easier in perhaps Blake 7 which is
Yes.
aimed at a slightly older audience
Yeah.
than Saturday Tea Time opposite the A-Team. But another thing that has happened, I think, of recent, we're so far removed from the Colin Baker era now that you see a new generation of fans as they come out on Blu-ray, perhaps experiencing these seasons for the first time and really taking to them in a way that, you know, for many years it was that. I think fandom felt a bit ashamed of that era because it was the one that got it cancelled first time round or put on hiatus.
You know, that's exactly right. I've been watching the Blu-ray set of season 22 recently, and I've enjoyed it far more than I ever have done in the past.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed it, and there's some great storytelling in there. There are problems. I mean, we've just gone over some of the problems, but there's some great storytelling. There's some good, fun stories.
And Colin gives it his all, as he does here. And as I said, there's a kind of moral conundrum of church versus the crown and politics versus faith that runs throughout the whole story. The Doctor gets some lovely little speeches, and I love the fact that he finds empathy with Queen Mary, even though she has some particularly genocidal tendencies, shall we say.
She's a historical bad guy, isn't she? I mean, you won't read many nice things about Queen Mary. I mean, because in the end, she ended up on the losing side of history, and as we know, history is written by the victors, isn't it? So and it very cleverly got around that. It didn't do that obvious caricature of the wicked queen.
There isn't really a bad guy in it. There's lots of people with lots of different religious agendas, shall we say, who probably would do the same, like the people she's subjugating would probably do the same to her. You know, they're trying to kill her. She believes that she's on the side of God. And so it just looks at this moral kind of conundrum there rather than trying to do a typical good guys versus bad guys story.
Well, it's quite often forgotten that obviously when Queen Mary died, she was succeeded by her half-sister Elizabeth I. But the burning at the stake didn't finish. It just was a different bunch of guys who were being burned. It was the other lot that was being burned. And I think and a proper historian will correct me, I've no doubt, but I have a feeling that there were more people burned under Elizabeth than there were under Mary. I'm sure I've read that somewhere at some point. But of course, she's good Queen Bess. She's
Yes. Is this the one that David Tennant has his wicked way with, or not?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So
she's Stacey out of Gavin and Stacey.
So David Tennant likes a woman who's a bit of a genocidal maniac. That's good to know.
Well, yes, but is that the correct way of looking at it? Because to be a late medieval Renaissance monarch, you basically had to be pretty ruthless about things.
Yeah, I'm being facetious somewhat.
Yeah.
But I mean, so let's talk about Mary a bit more. She's played by Anna Rudin. This is her only big Finnish performance. She seems to have done a lot of theatre, although recently she played small parts in The Power, Pennyworth and Doctors. What do you think of her performance in this playing Mary?
I think she's absolutely fine. I mean, she doesn't stand out. You don't think, oh, blimey, that's a terrific performance, but yeah, she's fine. She does the job. I think pretty much everybody in this is overshadowed by Colin and Maggie, aren't they?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of room for anyone else to make much of an impact here. I think you are listening to the Doctor and the new companion.
Yeah, and it's very much Big Finish and indeed BBV regulars of the time. So George Crowe is played by Sean Jackson. John Wilson is played by Gary Russell.
That really struck me actually because Gary has got a very recognisable voice.
He does.
And the character comes on and you go, oh, that's Gary. And in the way that they don't do that so much anymore. In those days, they sort of did have small parts played by anybody who happened to be around the studio. But you don't get that now. Big Finish have moved on from that.
Yeah. We did an episode recently and it was Sword of Orion. And I was very surprised to find Mark Gatiss killed off in the first 10 minutes. I didn't even realise it. Because it was just... They obviously were figuring this out, but they had their regular repertoire. But then it was like, anybody who's about... This character's only got 4 lines. You need to do it. Other people in there are William Leaf, played by Jez Fielder, Lady Sarah, played by Jo Castleton, who...
Okay, yeah.
So Jo's in a lot of these, but she's probably more famous for being part of the BBV range.
She's more famous for taking her kit off in that dreadful Saigon DVD, I'm afraid. But more importantly, for looking so embarrassed and in the background interviews. I felt so sorry for that woman. I mean, that's an abused actress. That's an abused actress there, as she's being interviewed. Oh dear.
Before that, she was in the Auton videos, and I have to say, like those Auton videos, I really enjoy them, but they're shot under very kind of extreme circumstances, very quickly, no money. Yes. And so I don't think anybody delivers their best performance because they just don't have the time. So it was quite nice to hear her here and actually giving a bit more of a subtler, more like just like a nice performance. And I was like, just to prove her acting chops a bit more. And and she has a lovely relationship with Colin in this. And again, she turns out to be sort of a baddie a little bit, like just like everybody's got their agenda. She didn't know it, but she was about to, through her innocence, I guess, was about to poison the Queen. And again, it's down to the writing. All of the characters get their little moments and get their little story arcs. There's nobody there just to bulk up the numbers, essentially. Beyond that, we've got Reverend Thomas, played by Nicholas Pegg, and Francois, I'll get this wrong, Francois Denoles? I don't know, played by Barnaby Edwards.
Let me have a look.
My pronunciations on this one are really...
French teacher look. Francois Denoles.
Okay, I wasn't too far off.
Francois
Denoles, played by Barnaby... played by Barnaby Edwards, and then we've got a Royal Guard played by Alistair Locke.
Sorry, Royal Guard. Sorry, no.
It is the early Big Finish repertoire there, but as you say, they all give lovely performances.
It's whoever's ligging about in the studio, isn't it, or in the office, or making the next the next CD.
We've kind of covered the main characters, the script, things like that. Are there any other points that you particularly wanted to cover on this story?
Well, I think you've said it all, really. Well, between us, we've said it all. That it's a gentle story. It's a historical story for the most part. The big thing about it is bringing in the new companion, and Evelyn is there from the very first scene. She is exactly as we're going to know her over the next 8 years, I think it is, until she stops being a regular, and just so important to those early years of rehabilitating Colin's character as the Doctor, helping to do that, of being the companion that should have been with Colin right from the beginning, and we still miss her because Maggie Stables died in 2014, and is still very much missed, wouldn't it be? I mean, even after the character was written out and then killed off in the ongoing thing, they kept bringing her back as a historical, as a past companion.
And I think now that Big Finish tend to jump around their own timeline more because they've been going so long, it would be lovely to just think you could get a box set of Evelyn and the Sixth Doctor right in there, not even involved in her main story arc, just a couple of stories like this. But
which is what they did, didn't they? They after they wrote her out in they foreshadowed her writing out in Arrangements for War.
Yeah,
and then they came back. The next story they came back to her and she'd already left, and then there was a Seventh Doctor story, Death in the Family, where she dies. But then she's brought back again with the Sixth Doctor in the Thomas Brewster stories.
Of course,
where she's, which is again, it's in her past. It's in that period between meeting Rossiter and then leaving him and then coming back again. It would be lovely, wouldn't it? But you could never. I don't think you could recast this one. In the way that you can recast. Well, you could probably recast the Sixth Doctor, when the time comes, because all the Doctor's companions from the past have been cast. But I don't think you would recast an audio-only actor.
I think people would probably have an issue with that. I don't know. I don't quite know why it sits funny with me, but it just does.
I think it's possibly because all we've got of that companion anyway is the voice.
Yeah.
Whereas with the TV companions, we've got a bit more than the voice, haven't we? We've got the image and so on that we can have in our mind and the rest of it. I don't know. It is bizarre, isn't it? It is bizarre how we do look at these things.
I also think perhaps now it's people don't quite appreciate how groundbreaking it was to introduce a new companion for the Sixth. I know we've had Bernice and others in the books, but there's something, again, it's this tangibility of like they're prose on a page, and
Yes.
I don't mean this in any sort of slight to any of the books, but it fit like. For me, growing up and getting into these things, that felt like fan fiction in a way. It's not. It's perfectly legitimate Doctor Who. But when you've got the actors there, as you were saying earlier, to suddenly go, here is Colin Baker as the Sixth Doctor with a brand new companion. I know there's loads of them now, but at that time, it was a really bold move.
Well, Evelyn was the first original Big Finish companion.
Yeah.
Do you know who the second one was?
Either Hex or the one that was with the... she's on the tip of Eremen, that's it.
No,
Still going strong. No?
Neither of those. The second original companion was Bev Tarrant, just in the very next release, who became more a part of the Benny stories. She settled on the collection with Benny. The next story after this is the first of the Daleks ones, the genocide machine. And Bev is introduced in that as a sort of a semi-antagonistic character with... you've got Bev and Ace in that, haven't you?
Yes.
And she travels with the Doctor for a little while until she's given the push. But, and then she becomes part of the team on the collection with Bernice. And,
do you know, I that completely slipped my mind. It's
it
been a
had
while.
forgotten mine. It had forgotten. I'd forgotten as well until I happened to look it up today for something else.
Wow.
So, yeah. But RMM came about a year later.
She sticks around till just after the new series. I think BBV and other people are still doing stuff with her today.
Yeah.
Albeit, I don't think with the same actress.
Well, it's Caroline Morris, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And a bit of a problem there because you've got an African character being played by a white British actress. You perhaps wouldn't cast it quite. I mean, she also was lovely. I met her at a couple of conventions. Caroline Morris looked strikingly like a young Elizabeth Sladen, oddly enough. But you perhaps wouldn't cast it quite that way anymore.
No, I think I remember Nick Briggs saying that at the time or shortly after, he was just like he was very uncomfortable with the casting, and he said it's nothing. He was like, she gave a brilliant performance, she was great in the role, but he was just uncomfortable with how it had been cast. But different times.
Well, we say different times. We just did different times. See, I've had a bit of an issue, a tiny issue, with the Brigadier Bambera set that came out this summer, where you've got a French character, with the outrageous French accent, being played again by a British actor. And
that's interesting.
And I had a little bit of a discussion on Facebook with one of the Big Finish groups about this, one of the Big Finish listeners groups. And I said, I don't know whether this is right or not. It feels that there's something not quite right about it.
Yeah.
But it's not the same as Lee Sun-Sheng.
Yeah. It's a difficult one. And, there's the constant debate of, well, can you only play somebody that's like you? And like, where is the acceptable milestone?
Absolutely.
And perhaps we're not the best people to set that milestone.
No. Well, there was a couple of French-speaking fans came in and said, "Well, actually, we don't have a problem with it personally. I don't have a problem with it myself," and I absolutely accept that. And clearly, the actor concerned has some knowledge of French, so was able to pronounce things reasonably well. Reasonably.
Indeed. So we've come to the end of the Marian Conspiracy, I think. And so I will ask everybody, is this a clanger or a banger?
Well, this is most definitely a banger, then. This is bang on.
I 100% agree.
Too hot for TV.
The Ratings War was released on the 10th of January 2002, and it was free on the front cover of Doctor Who magazine 313, written by Steve Lyons and directed by Gary Russell. News at the time, BBCI had started a Doctor Who chat room every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Again, simpler times, when you had to log on at a specific time for you to be rude about Doctor Who. It was announced that David Soul from Starsky and Hutch was announced as appearing in Death Comes to Time, so that was still going on. and he does show up in it playing the mission control. It's a tiny, tiny part, but in fact, when we covered it, I didn't even pick that up. Anthony Head was announced as leading the Excelsis trilogy, which was released alongside the second run of 8th Doctor stories, and dear old Mary Whitehouse had just passed away. Other releases at the time, Tomb of the Cybermen was out on DVD, Planet of Giants on VHS, Dalek Empire 4, Project Infinity had just come out, the 8th Doctor adventure was Hope by Mark Clapham, the past Doctor adventure was Drift by Simon A. Forward, and the big finish was obviously Invaders from Mars with the 8th Doctor and Charlie. The Tell Us novella was Time and Relative by Kim Newman. The soundtrack out was The Faceless Ones, and the comic strip was Children of the Revolution. So anything particularly stick out there?
That was the first of the Tell Us novellas, wasn't it? The Kim Newman one.
Yes, I think it was.
It was. No, it was. And they were a lovely little set of books. And
yeah,
it just felt like a doomed project from the beginning. I mean, it was lovely, but it just felt that this can't last. And sure enough, it didn't last, did it? It's.
I mean, I'm looking at them on a shelf over there, and there's about 15 of them, something like that. And they are great little books, but I think when you've got a monthly book range already, you've got the two novels.
2 novels a month.
I don't know whether there was room for this slightly more experimental novella range, and obviously I think it turned out that there wasn't. Although I had heard that they only got cancelled when the BBC started bringing licenses back in for the new series. So maybe there must have been enough people buying them if they had plans to continue. So
what were the 2 novels again? Hope and Drift.
Hope and Drift, that's it.
Yeah, Hope was who wrote Hope?
Mark Clapham.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I remember that as being an interesting one. I don't remember Drift so much. I was writing reviews of these for Shock Ice Kitchen at the time.
Oh, so right, I remember that.
Well, Shock Ice Kitchen was made by my friends and colleagues from the Whovers group in Derby.
Right.
And, in fact, I edited the last ever issue of Shock Ice Kitchen, which was an online one. Just the one I edited. I didn't kill it off, but I suppose I did. But I suppose I did.
When did that run until? Did it go into the new series?
The last edition, because it had stopped being viable as a print edition when Forbidden Planet decided they were no longer going to take fanzines.
Okay.
And that sort of pretty much killed it off as a print one. And we kept it going for, I don't know, maybe another 6, maybe as many as 8 online issues as PDFs. And the last issue was a review of Series 2 of the television series, of the first 10 in the series.
I miss fanzines in that form. I know we've got the internet now. But they were great places to read opinions and news and sometimes rumours and sometimes absolute lies as well.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember, I feel like I picked up Shock Ice Kitchen because I grew up in Birmingham, which, isn't a million miles away from Derby, and I feel like I picked it up either in Forbidden Planet there, or there was another shop called Nostalgia and Comics, which used to stock loads, and I used to love going in, and they'd always have 5 or 6 different Doctor Who fanzines, and it was like, you pick them up for a couple of quid.
It was in there with Shocker, yeah, absolutely. I think those of us who are ever tangentially involved with it were very proud of it. It was funny, and I think it's still well remembered. And then we had a spin-off one as well. We had Shock Ice Snack, which was a sort of a spin-off fanzine, which was more sort of news and stuff. But no, I was doing book reviews for it at the time. I was getting all the novels and reading them at high speed and banging off reviews of them. So it kept me reading them and committed to reading them quickly.
Too hot for TV.
When a power failure takes all other stations off the air, the country is left watching mindless reality TV. Meanwhile, the Doctor is on a mission to complain about poor quality programming, only to discover Beep The Meep has their fingers in what viewers are watching. The Doctor and Beep try to outwit each other as Beep attempts to take over the channel and the minds of those watching, but the Doctor, having seen the TV listings, destroyed Beep's transmitter long ago, meaning the viewers are safe and Beep is arrested.
Too hot for TV.
The ratings war.
Beep The Meep.
Beep The Meep. So when you suggested the Marian Conspiracy, I was thinking about what we could pair it with.
I'm curious about this because I can't see a connection. I don't know where you came up with this.
There isn't really one apart from the fact it's Colin, but I just thought it'd be nice to cover something that doesn't get talked about a lot It's a short, it's a 35-minute story. It's got Beep the Meep, and tonally, it's about as far away from the Marian Conspiracy as you can get. So I just thought there is no thematic link or anything like that. But what it does do, I think, is give us two quite different versions of the Colin Baker Doctor, and so I thought it'd be interesting to contrast and compare. So, I mean, first of all, have you heard this before? Do you remember hearing it before? If you did,
I certainly did. I had it. I bought that issue of DWM. I mean, for me, you see, I mean, we talked earlier about when I first started reading DWM in the early 90s, and when I did and didn't listen to Doctor Who, I didn't become involved in fandom at all until the turn of the century. I didn't go to a convention until 2000. I went to the Panopticon in Manchester in 2000, by which time I was 42, so... But for me, the thing that defines me as a Doctor Who fan is that I buy the magazine. That's what being a committed fan is, as opposed to being a viewer or whatever. I know that's rubbish, but it's just how it feels to me. So yeah, I had that issue of DWM. That was the third freebie that they'd done. The first being Talking About My Regeneration, the documentary.
Yes.
That launched Big Finish in November '99. Launched Doctor Who at Big Finish, and then we had the promotional one for Paul McGann at Big Finish, Storm Warning, and episode 1 of Storm Warning, together with something called Last of the Titans, which was an adaptation of an audiovisual story.
Yes, that's right.
From years before. And then this one, which was paired with episode 1 of Invaders from Mars, promoting the second McGann series. A slightly edited version of that.
I think it's a neat little way to get people involved, because it's easy, like you and me jumped on the Big Finish bandwagon quite immediately, but it's important to remember that not everybody did, and even, obviously not all Doctor Who fans listen to Big Finish now, but they were still trying to pick up new fans, and I presume the magazine had a higher circulation than the Big Finish CDs did at the time.
I think
so. I think it's great for them to go, look, we're doing Paul McGann, which is very exciting in case you didn't hear the last series, but also here's a little freebie for you. And I definitely heard it at the time, but I couldn't remember a thing about it. So I was quite pleased to find this just little fun, sort of irreverent little play that made me chuckle a bit along the way.
Yeah. I remembered it had Beep the Meep. Not being a reader of the comics, I'd heard of Beep the Meep in the same sort of way as I'd heard of Absalom Dark Dalek Killer and that sort of stuff, without actually any particular direct knowledge of it. So, it was fun. You're absolutely right. It was fun. And it sort of started a bit of a tradition in Big Finish of these sort of silly but horribly evil villains. I mean, in more recent years, we've had the Scorches, haven't we? Which is a very similar idea. And then there was another freebie a few years later after this called Cuddlesome, a Peter Davison story, which again had a similar sort of theme to it, of the thing that looks cute and cuddly but is actually really horrible.
I was someone, again, who knew what Beep the Meep was, and really the only Doctor Who comics I'd ever really read was the 8th Doctor ones, and so I'd heard of the others. And actually, while doing this podcast, it's been fantastic to jump into other eras of the comics and sort of learn about them. But I've not done any Beep the Meep. But I really like the idea. As you say, it's a bit of a silly villain. It almost takes all the cliches of a Doctor Who villain and really makes them work in a kind of a jokey but threatening way. And he does get all this dialogue of like, you will suffer for this Doctor. And when he first meets the Doctor, he has his own Doctor moment, which is sort of taken the mickey out of and become famous from the Doctor Who night, that the Mark Gatiss sketches.
Oh, yeah.
And, screaming and shouting, I will kill you for this, Doctor, and stuff like that. But I love the idea of this creature that is desperately cute, and that's how it kind of gets into the psyche of people, and then all it really wants to do is just smash and destroy everything. It's a very simple idea, it's very silly, but I think it does work, especially when you just throw it in for 35 minutes.
Yeah, well, of course it had been created in The Star Beast, which was in issue 19 of Doctor Who Weekly, written by Pat Mills and John Wagner. If rumours are to be believed, then we may not have seen the last of Beep the Meep.
Hello, it's Future Dylan here again. Just to pop in to say this episode was of course recorded before it was officially announced that Beep The Meep would be returning to Doctor Who for the 60th anniversary specials. And later on you might also hear some references to next year, when we're actually talking about this year, but such is the nature of time travel, wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey and all that. Well, exactly. This was another reason why I thought this would be a fun one to do, just to see if that character does appear, perhaps somewhere in the near future.
Who knows?
Then we can come back and compare whether it feels like it was the same character.
We absolutely have to talk about the song, don't we?
Yes.
Of this, which Steve Lyons, who wrote this, described this. He said he needed something in order to get out in the comic strip. The point where Beep becomes evil is shown basically entirely by the expression on his face. He transforms from the cute face to the horribly evil face, and Steve needed an audio version of that. So he said he tried to think of something that was unbearably cute on the surface, but pure evil inside. And the answer to that, he said, was Disney. So he wrote the words for the song and attempted to capture sort of a Disneyness about it. And
I will probably throw a clip to the song in just here. So
ask your neighbour round for a bite and a drink, then nibble off his face till he's raw and pink. Enjoy his surprise as you suck out his eyes. You are Beep's friend, smash them all. Put your dog in a blender and close the lid. Cut your hamster to pieces to feed your kid. Slice the fur from your cat, deep fry him in some fat. You are Beep's friend, kill them.
I can't hate a villain who's got his own theme tune. We'd also had, with Big Finish, we'd had Frobisher appear in the main range, and I think a subscriber special as well. Now, there was people really didn't like their comic books crossing over.
No. But the Frobisher had been in the Holy Tower, which is now, I think, considered again to be one of the absolute highlights of the Big Finish oeuvre.
Yeah.
But at the time was their worst selling CD ever.
Yeah.
It's picked up over the years. It's picked up over the years, and I mean, it's absolutely brilliant. Fantastic story. Now, interesting you bring up that, because this was recorded on the same day as the second Frobisher story, The Maltese Penguin, which was a giveaway, for a subscriber's giveaway. I mean, that's how they used to do it in those days. That these days you get a subscriber's short trip, which comes as a free download. In those days, you got a whole CD come with your CD. And the Maltese Penguin was one of the first of those. And that was a Frobisher story. Dogbolt, the baddie in that, was played by Toby Longworth. Well, they used the same crew. They used largely the same cast to do to do the ratings for as well. So here we've got Toby Longworth taking on the role of Beep The Meep.
And I think he does a fantastic job of flipping between the shouty evil version and the cute version. I don't mean this in any sort of disparaging way, but the cute version reminds me of the cute voice that Katie Manning sometimes puts on when she's doing interviews and stuff like that. I don't mean that in any negative way towards Katie Manning, but it just reminded me of that.
I should say nothing other than I hear exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Every time Nick Briggs is interviewed about Frobisher, he goes, well, I don't think people really responded to it very well. And I would just, Big Finish have done so much and brought back so much. I just want more Frobisher.
Absolutely. And I have heard an interview recently where he was saying that it has been a slow builder, that it's sold about as much as the rest of the Big Finishes from that era now. But it's taken a long, long time to do that. And I think it's taken probably Rob Shearman's reputation to have, because that was Rob Shearman's first Big Finish work. Yeah. And he considers the Maltese Penguin as his worst Big Finish work as it happens.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But Rob has become a major writer, hasn't he? And both obviously for Big Finish on television, with his only story on television, Dalek, being among many people's favourites, and obviously in the years following that for Big Finish, he did many of the highlights, and then stopped doing them, sadly. And his last story was an evening story for Big
Was
Finish.
it?
It was in the anthology release 100. He did
Ah,
My Own Private Wolfgang, I think it's called, the Mozart story.
of course, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a shame, but I understand Rob wants to write what Rob wants to write, and
yeah,
Doctor
absolutely.
Who. He's very happy. I like the fact that he's still very much happy to be involved in fandom, and he's always very present at events and things like that. I just
He was.
don't think his.
I saw him at the weekend. He was at a Town Sticks celebration. He was very happy to be there and take part in that. Yeah.
Let's get back a little bit to
Hmm.
this ratings war. As we said, it was written by Steve Lyons, who at this point was mostly known for his Doctor Who books, and he delivers what essentially is a two-hander between the Doctor and Beep the Meep. There's other characters that figure, but they've got a few lines of dialogue at the beginning and the end. The majority of it's set in this control room. It's very difficult writing a story of this length for a sci-fi show. The nearest comparison I can probably get, Red Dwarf, where they've got 30 minutes to fire in a lot of like a solid Doctor Who story. And I think, it's a very funny story. Colin and Beat the Meat just sort of riff off each other. And, I think he delivers a serviceable script for this sort of thing. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's perfectly serviceable script. Steve Lyons a good writer, and apparently he was given virtually no time at all to turn this script out. He
Right.
was in the middle of writing a novel, a Doctor Who novel. Gary contacted him and said, "We want you to do a giveaway for DWM. We want it to be DWM." Specific, so we want Beep the Meep in it because of the DWM connection, and it's a Sixth Doctor story, and we need it in a week. And apparently Steve didn't say yes straight away. He thought
Right.
about it and went away and got some ideas together, and then got back in touch and said, "Yeah, go for it." And it's a good little story. It keeps moving. It doesn't lose interest. Well, you can't, can you? You got
No.
30 minutes. It's probably one of the stronger ones of these DWM
Yeah.
giveaways, because it's not an easy thing to do, is it?
No, exactly. You've got 30 odd minutes.
Yeah.
It's a bit Curse of the Fatal Death, I thought, in the way that the Doctor's already it's that, oh, I placed that sofa there,
Yes.
in that the Doctor has already destroyed the machinery, but actually he never destroyed the machinery. He made Beep think that he'd destroyed the machinery, and the same. You shot me. The Doctor's dead. Oh, the Doctor's not dead. I actually been draining the power from your gun for hours. So
Yeah. This is true.
it just kind of pokes fun a little bit at the cliches of Doctor Who a little bit, which I'm fine with, and kind of poking what was in vogue at the time of a lot of actors, and you'd hear this a lot at Doctor Who conventions of actors going, and now television's full of endless quiz shows and reality shows, which, as we now know, 20 odd years later, that those have very much become part of television. But I think people thought at the time this mindless, in inverted commas, content was going to destroy television as we knew it, but instead we've had this whole renaissance of drama with the streaming services.
Yeah.
So I think people take them a bit more seriously now.
There was apparently some debate between Steve and Gary as to that TV thing, because Gary wanted to change it and make it a radio show, specifically
Right.
a radio show to tie in with the. I was reading this morning, which is why I sound as if I know a little bit. Thanks to the Big Finish Companion and also, Ben Cook's book, the New Audio Adventures, which is very worth reading. He wanted to make it a radio show, and Steve sort of said, well, can we actually stick with it being a TV show and the Big Brother pastiche at the beginning and all that sort of business? And Steve in the audio companion, the Big Finish Companion book, the second volume of that, he talks about how that he realised afterwards that there's in one of the comic strips that Beep the Meep does something very similar, tries to take over the world with a TV mind control via TV. So he accidentally reused a plot that had already been used with Beep the Meep. But there we are. These things
I mean,
happen.
the Daleks are always moving planets, aren't they? Beep the Meep
Yeah,
can use the same scheme a few
yeah,
times.
yeah. Because this is not Beep the Meep's only Big Finish appearance, is
No.
it? Because many years later, They adapted, in fact, in 2019, fairly recently, they did an adaptation of the original comic strip, The Star Beast.
Yes, they did, yeah.
Which I think probably can only be considered partially successful. And they didn't use Toby Longworth. In fact, they used an actress. They used a female voice to play the role of
That's
Beep.
interesting. Do you know, I've not heard it, but I think it was really interesting when they did the novel adaptations that everybody had been like, what are you going to do those for years? And then everybody realised actually quite a few of these work much better as novels, and I suspect that's probably the same with the comic strips.
Although they've been very successful at doing versions of the comic strip adaptations of the Avengers, for example.
Yes,
they've been very good releases.
Let's talk a little bit about Colin in this, because it's a very different performance to what we had in the previous story. Would you say this is more like his TV Doctor, or do you think this is another string to Colin's bow as a kind of slight revised version of his Doctor?
I think it is slightly revised. He's not the abrasive Sixth Doctor that we saw on television this year. He's quite cross with Beep the Meep, but he's also playing with him as well. He's not going to push him in an acid bath, is he, or anything like that? Or,
no.
or drown him in an icy pool, or knock his brains out.
It's a funnier version of Colin again. You know, there's no time for those sort of softer moments, but he's funnier, more playful, even doing quite a funny impression of Beep the Meep towards the end of the story.
Yeah, it fits in very well with the mood of the piece, doesn't it? It's a comedy piece. It's light-hearted. It's amusing. You've got a silly cartoon villain. You can't really have this sort of brutal, murderous Doctor that might occasionally have appeared on TV.
Well, no, especially when you've got a brutal, murderous villain that's also nice sometimes in the form of Beep the Meep, I guess. He does get a little speech at the end, the Doctor, that I think could be read as a kind of attack on what was popular in television, but also could be levelled at some of the criticisms of his era of Doctor Who. You know, he talks about hiatuses and looking for a medium that could be louder than TV isn't for him, and you'll be hearing more from me, I can assure you. I could be reading into things that aren't there, but it just feels like there's a few little meta references to criticisms of that era.
I think you're right. I'm looking forward to his renaissance on Big Finish.
Yeah, but it's a fun little story. I don't have too much more to say about it. I don't know whether there's anything else you particularly want to say.
There's not much to say, is there really? It's there and it's fun, and there's some interesting little behind-the-scenes things, and anything written by Steve Lyons is going to be worth reading, listening to, or whatever, because he's produced some of the best non-television Doctor Who that there's been in the last 30 years, 25 years. He's a fine writer, is Steve.
Absolutely, and any other bit of Colin Baker in his Big Finish guys is always good with me.
Definitely.
So we have to decide whether it's a clanger or a banger.
Well, it's not as much of a banger as the Marian Conspiracy, is it? But it's fine. It's a muffled bang.
It's fine. It's a muffled thud.
Too hot for TV.
That was our little look at the Big Finish era of Colin Baker. So thanks so much for joining me today to do this.
It's a pleasure.
Is there anything you want to plug in particular?
Well, we've got Whoverville next year now. We've just done this year's Whoverville, and we're looking forward to probably what might well turn out to be our biggest ever Whoverville, when we will be celebrating Doctor Who's 60th anniversary, and that's on the 2nd of September. So quite some way off. Cosmic Masque, including the fiction section that I edit, is available from DWAS Online, DWAS DWAS Online, with stories from some of the best fan fiction writers around, and join the Doctor Who Appreciation Society, I suppose. And you can join Whovers. You can join our Whovers Facebook group as well, and we have online as well as in-person meetings, and everybody's welcome.
Fantastic. And if there's anybody out there who's never been to a Whoverville, I've been to a couple, and they're great events. The perfect size of Doctor Who convention for me. You can go and sit and watch some panels, and they're always quite informative and funny panels. There's never a huge queue for autographs. There's never a huge queue for photos. You can usually get what you want within 10 minutes. It's a lovely little informal event where you get to meet people, catch up, sit and have a cup of tea, have a beer, whatever, and just say hello to people.
Well, we have a big rule in Whoverville, and the big rule is we don't have rules unless we really need to. So we try to keep it as relaxed as we possibly can. But we're so lucky that I think we've got the best venue for a Doctor Who convention anywhere. I think Derby Quad is well, I've said it loads of times before that every city should have a quad. it's a little arts venue, cinema. It's a charitable institution. That's how it's funded and so on. It's a great place to watch films. It's the most comfy cinema seats you've ever sat in. Lovely cafe bar, and just a wonderful atmosphere. And it's a community, not irrespective of the fact we have Whoville there. I go into Quad a lot, and you see the same faces, and you say hello to people, and it's a friendly, welcoming, terrific place to go. So that's Derby Quad, so I'll plug them as well.
Fantastic. And if people want to find you on social media, Twitter, what have you got a Twitter?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm at Stephen Hatcher. I think there's an underscore there somewhere. Stephen with a PH. I think it's at Stephen_Hatcher, but yeah, I'm easy to find. And on Facebook as well. I don't do any of the ones that youngsters do. I don't tick or talk, and I don't do Instagram. Although I'm told it's not just youngsters who do Instagram, but I don't.
No, there's all sorts of people, but it depends whether you've got enough photos you actually want to share.
No.
There you go.
Facebook and Twitter is enough. I'm there. I'm findable.
As I said, thank you so much for joining me today on this Sixth Doctor journey.
Pleasure.
Next time, I'm joined by Ryan McGibbon of the Ramble in Motion podcast, where we look at the Seventh Doctor comic strip Final Genesis, the computer game CD-ROM Destiny of the Doctors, and the Iris Wildtime audio The Panda Invasion. Until next time, I've been Dylan.
And I haven't. Steve, keep listening to Big Finish.
And we'll see you again soon.
Too hot for TV.
And I said to myself, the one thing you will never own a full set of, so don't even try, is the annuals. It took me about 5 years before I got a full set of the annuals.
I feel your pain. You know, I only completed my New Adventures set last year. I probably had, how many of them were there? Probably 30, 40, something like that in total.
A bit more, I think, but yeah.
I was missing about 10 anyway, and some of them were silly money, and some of them I was really surprised that I'm sure I owned them at some point and read them, but they just disappeared. I'd lent them to someone or lost them in a house move. But and I'm now one book off finishing the Past Doctors range of BBC books.
Brilliant.
But that book is the most expensive one.
What's that? Is that Adam Hunt Mother?
I think it's Indestructible, the Indestructible Man or something.
Yeah,
like that.
okay. Oh, that's the Jerry Anderson pastiche.
Is it? I have no idea what it is. But...
It's a Jerry Anderson pastiche with Zoe on the front. And it's it's Doctor Who meets International Rescue and Captain Scarlet. Captain Scarlet being the indestructible man of the title.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I set for the New Adventures and the Missing Adventures. I was just like, because I'm very kind of nostalgic about them, I was like, I will complete the set no matter what. But for the BBC books, because less nostalgic, I was like, I've set myself a price point that I'm willing to go to for the rarer books, and I'm not going to go over it just for my own sanity. And
well, I've got the full set. And I've read them all, but worse than that, because I managed to acquire keeping copies and reading copies of most of them.
Oh, nice.
So most of the copies I've got have not actually been opened. I mean, some of them have. But I read Longbarrow and the Dying Days off the BBC website when they were on there to avoid having to open the books. But the problem with them is, I was interesting at the weekend, we had the event, Terrance Dicks celebration event, and I was talking to Peter Darvill Evans and Nigel Robinson, who were both editors of those books, and they signed copies of their books for me, their novels. And I said to them, look, please be very careful when you open them, because the horrible cheap glue that was used in making these, they'll fall to bits. And they do. Have some of yours fall to bits? The glue dries out something horrible in them.
Oh,
And
no, I
if
don't
you
think they
open
have
them, they
on.
just boom. Yeah, the covers come right off. Yeah,
I mean, I haven't
Copydex is your
opened
friend.
them. I haven't opened them in a while, so
Be
maybe I
very
just
careful.
won't.
Be very careful. Yeah. And the other thing I've done, which I really shouldn't have done, where I've got them in my bookcase, they're facing onto a window, albeit one with a net curtain, and the spines have faded on some of
Oh
them.
no, that's my VHS collection is still in my childhood bedroom at my dad's house, which he keeps as like some weird. I don't know why he's never. It's like I died years ago, and whenever I go back there, the VHSs are facing a window and they're just slowly fading into oblivion.
Oh
But,
dear.
there's not a lot I can do about it, and those VHSs, they're a lot of memories, but they're worth bugger all. And but lovely covers.
Oh yeah, I mean the thing, yes, mine are all in. So I'd say in the attic. That sounds inaccessible. They're not. They're easily accessible in our attic here. I did actually come to the point where I took them off the shelves and they're just piled up on top of each other in the attic. But yeah, I should have the sense to take the covers out, put them in a nice album, and throw all the plastic away. But
Yeah.
hey, it'll just go to a landfill and cause a problem. So it might as well stay in my attic.
Yeah, well, you know that because a lot of second-hand shops won't take videos anymore, will they? Because
No.
they're a fire hazard. But there we go.
I've got a friend who collects VHSs, and I said, well, a couple of friends who collect VHSs. I said, why? Why would you do that? It's a horrible format. Yes, it's got a nice picture on the front, but
there's a real market for them now. Like they've kind of become retro. Maybe not the Doctor Who ones, but I know people like, especially like the video nasties and the 80s horror films and stuff. There's a real like, I want those films on VHS, and there's sort of been a bit of a resurgence.
It's a nostalgia thing, isn't it? But it didn't help that when they brought out the DVD range for Doctor Who, the covers were so horrible. I mean, they're much better now, but initially they were dreadful.
Yeah. But and then you get the lovely Blu-rays, and we'll keep buying them in various different formats.
Until we have them injected direct into our heads.